No, the Democratic Socialists do not want to admit that the war is over. They actually can't afford to have the war end. That's the most important point here. This is why we're not hearing from people. This is why they're all radio silent. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings and welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. 702-820-1234. Accidents, injuries in Nevada and California. 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Now, this is a point of fact, right? The Gaza war was always about something different than the Palestinians. This was a rallying cry for the global socialist movement, particularly here in the U.S. and in Europe. We'll call it the Mamdani-Thunberg axis, right? The guy running for mayor, the Democratic Socialist running for mayor in New York, who's become the new darling of the Democratic Party. And of course, Greta Thunberg, the climate activist who became a figure in the anti-Israel movement. This axis, I guess, represented, I'm calling it that, but there's a lot more people in it, just those two clowns. But this axis is very quiet. They're trying to figure out what to do next, because if, in fact, the peace holds, and if, in fact, Israel will withdraw, and they are, and the hostage deal concludes, remains to be seen how today and tomorrow go, they're going to have to find a new host organism, politically speaking, to latch onto. They're going to have to find a new cause, a new catalyst for their very political existence. Now, when I say it was never about the Palestinians, it never was about the Palestinians, plain and simple. Read the Democratic Socialists of America statement. They put this out yesterday. And this is straight from the statement. They go up, they say, oh, we're glad that the ceasefire has been announced. They don't even call it a peace deal. They call it a ceasefire. And then they write in the third paragraph, however, DSA, that's the Democratic Socialists of America, harbors no illusions that Israel will honor any negotiated agreement that preserves Palestinian life or self-determination. Past ceasefires only slowed the carnage, writes the DSA, and Israel continued military action with impunity. It goes on, describes how Israel is terrorizing the entire Middle East, that countries like Syria, Yemen, and Iran are the victims of Israeli aggression. That Israel is constantly threatening nuclear engagement to, quote, violently impose its fascist, expansionist aspirations, close quote. Until all of that is given up, until Israel is held accountable for a decades-long list of war crimes, there can be no lasting peace. This from the Democratic Socialists of America, and by extension now the Democratic Party that seems to be going the way of the socialists. So why is this important? Remember back to global change, climate change, global warming. Well, getting ahead of myself here, global warming was what we grew up with. My generation was constantly told that there was a hole in the ozone, that every time we used, this was back in the 80s, an aerosol spray can for anything, we were killing the ozone, we were killing the rainforests, and that the planet was slowly becoming warmer and warmer, and that gradually we would all burn alive. Temperatures would be north of 200 degrees. This kind of alarmism was something that my generation lived with on a near daily basis. And then what happened? we suddenly had entered a period of cooling where temperatures began to go down. And instead of declaring a victory and saying, all right, we did it, the climate change activists rebranded it. They said, oh, okay, well, it's not about global warming, it's climate change. Now it is just as alarming that the temperatures are dropping. Because they could never achieve victory and go home. It couldn't be over, because if it was over, they'd have to give up their positions of power. They would have to give up the political machine that had been built up around the myth that warming, whatever was going on, was induced by man. These people didn't want to give up power, and they didn't want to give it up because it was always a cynical ploy to get power. It was never about the environment. I don't know, half of them probably didn't believe it. You think Al Gore actually believed that the planet was going to spontaneously combust, or was he using it as a means to collect tens of millions of dollars for his own personal enrichment? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And that's the situation here. They have been pressing for a ceasefire. Cease fire now. I know this because I've been paying attention. So have you. It's all they wanted. They wanted the war to end. And now it's over, and they've shifted the goalposts. You see how they've done it? Oh, look. Ceasefire, we'll see if it holds, but really this is not over until Israel has been held to account for decades of war crimes. This is precisely how communist, socialist apparatchiks work. This is exactly how they operate. We have to pay very careful attention. Now, I firmly believe that one of the many reasons why Trump sought to get this deal in the Middle East was to take some of the hot air, out of these people's movement. This is a pressure release valve. It's going to de-radicalize a few, or at least get them to back down. And in that process, of course, the movement itself is going to struggle to rebrand. The movement itself is going to have to declare even more unequivocally it's anti-Semitism, it's anti-Israel sentiments. It's really about conquering Israel, because the movement has determined that Israel as a country, Jews specifically as human beings, as a group of people, are the exploiters. Metaphorically speaking, to the new age socialist, embodied here in the U.S. as the Democratic Socialists of America and the Democratic Party, metaphorically speaking, Israel and Jewish people and Israelis are the exploitative class. They're the people who have the power. They are the people that have the ability to extract things unjustly from those that don't have the power. And the people who don't have the power are who? The Palestinians. They don't have any power. That's the fable. That is the story that these people have run with. This is why Greta Thunberg abandoned the environment thing, okay, and decided to go all in for Palestine. Is it because she's a social justice warrior, as her biography suggests? No. Is it because she goes where there is a political opportunity to undermine the West, to break down social order, social cohesion? Absolutely. Any opportunity to bring down Western civilization is welcome for these people, because they view it as a necessary acceleration to achieving the communist dream. And I see parallels to this to the late 19th century, early 20th century, as communists began to organize, where the Bolshevik Revolution began around the time of World War I, to gain steam in the Soviet Union, where Western Europe was infiltrated by communist agitators, and a number of states did everything they could to move these people out of their countries, ship them off back to Russia, because a lot of these people were Russian intellectuals. We're, I don't listen. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's just happening in real time, and we could discount the fact that the Democratic Party has moved so far left in a relatively short period of time. But I wouldn't want to do that, because we have to be aware that there's a real threat. These people, and we're going to talk a little bit about Antifa today as well, because it fits into this. These people would love to overthrow the government of the United States today, if they could. And they cloak themselves in the language of anti-fascism. They cloak themselves in the imagery of democracy. But in reality, they're quite the opposite. They are the fascists. They are the totalitarians. They are the people that want to do away with the voting public that selected Trump to lead them, the voting public that wanted to preserve capitalism, the free market, equal opportunity, not equal outcomes. They want to overthrow that. These people are dangerous. And these are also the same people that, as we reflect today on Charlie Kirk, what would have been his 32nd birthday, these are the people that would do unspeakable violence to us just to get their political will done. Dangerous times we find ourselves in. Sam Mirejovsky, here on the What's Right Media Network. Back in a moment.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Yeah, I think promises should be kept, Robbie, honestly. Yeah, we'll get to... This clip is so great. Folks, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings and welcome to the What's Right show, powered by Sam and Ash Injury Law. So, back in December of 24, almost a year ago, Alyssa Farah on The View promised to do something if Trump was successful in getting the hostages to be released. That's kind of a big deal because Farah is not a Trump fan. Here's what she said. Again, this is in December of 2024 on The View, our favorite show.
My point when I say I'm not going to be apocalyptic, it's not changing a tune. It's not making every single thing a 5-alarm fire. Yeah. If he does good, if he gets the Israeli hostages out, I promise I will wear a MAGA hat for one day on the show and say, thank you for doing it. Yeah. She'll knock it right off my head. But like, you have to be able to cheer for wins when they happen and then call out relentlessly the wrongdoing. Well,
oh, you can't do that, though, if you are a dedicated leftist, because no matter what Trump does, he does it as an orange fascist. That's the rule of thumb. That's the standard. There's no objective truth when it comes to the left. Now, a handful of people have come out, and of course, Bill Clinton writing a nice statement. Bill Clinton is not the Democratic Party. Bill Clinton is a Trump Republican. I mean, if he wasn't married to Hillary, he might as well. If you look at his presidency, you look at his platform and whatnot, I mean, a Bill Clinton speech and a Trump speech in terms of substance, policy substance, not too far apart. So I'm pointing this out. Now, Here's what caught my attention last night on CNN. This was Abby Phillips' show, and of course, Scott Jennings was there. And together with Jennings, you had Cornel West, speaking of a voice of socialism for quite some time in America. And even though the first phase of the peace deal was already well underway, West was still harping about the Palestinians. Brother Scott, do you not care about the Palestinians? Now, this is to my point that the left will move the goalposts again now that Trump has achieved what they thought was unachievable. They were hoping was unachievable. They now are going to find other ways to continue berating people about Palestine, all for the sake of boosting their political fortunes.
But Brother Scott, though, are you concerned about the Palestinians? Can you take that off of the Palestinians and all of their suffering?
Well, I'm concerned about what's happening to them right now. They're being shot in the street by Hamas.
Well, they're under occupation, and it just had 20,000 babies killed in 23 months. I mean, do you believe that a hostage on the by Palestinians has the same value as a Palestinian incarcerated? I just have to ask that question.
I don't regard some of the people that were in prison in Israel to be hostages. These were terrorists that we had to let go in order to get these 20 people back. The 20 living hostages did nothing wrong. Many, as Abby pointed out in her monologue, of the people the Palestinians wanted released are absolute terrorists who killed many people.
Have no trial and have had no due process.
These 20 people did nothing. The people taken on October the 7th were purely innocent.
Let me just 99%.
Okay. I rarely does Scott miss an opportunity. And I think it's because the conversation, if you watch the whole thing, was sort of about something different. Cornel West walks into a trap. This is my first comment on this. He says, do you believe, and you'll hear the left always saying this, do you believe that a hostage on the Palestinian side has the same value, hostage taken by the Palestinians, an Israeli hostage, has the same value as a Palestinian that's been incarcerated? And the short answer is that Hamas clearly doesn't think so. Now, why am I saying this? Am I saying this because Hamas hides its headquarters underneath hospitals? That Hamas puts its command centers underneath kindergartens, elementary schools? Is it because Hamas takes aid money, has for years taken money intended for the relief of their people and used it to buy weapons and build tunnels? Because all of that is true, and all of that is stuff that, of course, the socialists deny. But what is self-evident yesterday is that Hamas itself signed on to a deal where they traded 2,000 Palestinians, of which 250 were some really bad dudes, for 20 living Israelis. I think, unfortunately, Hamas admits to the world how little value their people have. And they're also inadvertently showing just how much Israel values life. This is something that's not talked about a lot in this deal. We're not bringing it up. I get into conversations about this with people that are on our side, and they go, "What's the deal? What's the deal? Is it 2,000 people?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's like 1,700 and 250. 1,700 basically people that are low-level offenders, people that are prisoners of war at risk. They don't want to release them in the midst of a conflict. But 250 have been sentenced and actually gone through a process and been determined in a court of law to be bad terrorists and have done bad things, really terrible things, killed people." So, and the reaction I get, "Well, that doesn't seem like the right deal." And I said, "Well, let's talk about what deal you'd be willing to make if it was your mother or your father or your son or daughter that was being held by these barbarians, I think you would want the government to release whoever. So I get it. And I also, you have to understand that our side values life. And in spite of the enormous propaganda to the contrary, every time the Hamas people come to the table and negotiate, they show just how little they value life. It's one of the many myths in this whole thing. All right, stay tuned. Let me tell you how Antifa connects into all of this, because that's a huge part of the story. Sam Mirejovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Greetings and welcome. The What's Right show, powered by Sam and Ash Injury Law, is on. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, at your service. Now, speaking of injury law, did you see this Alec Baldwin post? He crashed his wife's car, and then he put a video out explaining what had happened. Here's the video. Alec Baldwin, who is the most trustworthy person in America. Listen to how he explains the accident happening.
This morning I was in this car accident. A guy cut me off in a truck, big garbage truck. I mean, a garbage truck the size of a whale. To avoid hitting him, I hit a tree. I hit a big fat tree and crushed my car, my wife's car.
No, I don't believe him at all. The pictures, by the way, he's in a nice new Range Rover, white Range Rover. It's a big tree. The tree appears to be okay. I think the tree's going to live. The car does not appear to be okay. Baldwin is out there, looking disheveled and angry because nothing is ever this man's fault. I don't know if he literally shot a woman dead in the face, and it wasn't his fault. Interesting. I know, look, I'm not going to relitigate that thing, but I'm just telling you that if you or I were in his position, it would be life-ending for us. The grief that we would feel. So he was back out there complaining about the world against him. So anyway, apparently the people that own the truck, the garbage truck, which was not a Trump Make America Great Again truck, white truck driven by President Trump, by all accounts. Remember that from the campaign? It was not that. The garbage truck, the people claim that accident did not happen the way that Baldwin describes, and are saying that there's a police investigation and to just, wait for the results. Here's, by the way, why you always want to get a lawyer in an accident. You may think you were absolutely not at fault and everything's going to get taken care of, but then a guy like Alec Baldwin's going to come around, and after he's left the scene, everything's done, he's going to change a story of everything about how it happened. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. They come and cut me off. And it's so important to protect yourself. So just, letting you know this. Well, follow this. I'm very curious, but Baldwin sounds just like every defendant. About 30 to 40 minutes into their deposition, when I'm asking him questions, and just, I came out of nowhere. Okay. Sam and Ash Injury Law, the only law firm to trust if you've been in an accident. Why? We've got the experience. We've got the heart, got the compassion. And most importantly, we've got the drive to see to it that you get the justice that you deserve. Sam and Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Now, I got to tell you, this Antifa thing, some people are saying that it's going to heat up before it peters out. I don't know if it's going to peter out. I think the Antifa, and I said this to Alan Stock this morning when I joined him on his show in the mornings. I said, listen, I think Antifa is the shock troop of the Democratic Party. And one of the reasons I know Antifa is real is because Democrats now are pretending it doesn't exist. They're pretending that groups like Arabella Advisors aren't funding Antifa, that Antifa isn't a real organization. that it's sort of this vague idea. The name is I guess, a vague idea. Antifa, by the way, anti-fascist, just letting you know, that's what it means. And it is absolutely a misnomer. These people are the fascists. These people are the ones that put on masks and beat up reporters who dare reveal what is really going on in Seattle and Portland and other blue-dominated cities. These are the people who intimidate conservatives, who intimidate reporters, who intimidate politicians, anyone who they deem to be a threat to progressive values, so-called, right? These are the people that currently believe that even though the election turned out the way that it did, that Trump exercising his executive power given him by us, the people that voted for him in the last election, that in and of itself is democracy ending, and that to preserve democracy, we have to fight in the streets with violence to stop a duly elected president. I mean, none of it really makes sense. Now, the denials are fun, right? The denials that Antifa even exists. This is a new thing. And Alan was asking me about it this morning, and I said, of course they have to deny it. They have to deny it because they need to keep Antifa intact. And they also believe in Trump's threat that he will dismantle Antifa and their funders by using RICO. So the defense against that is to say, what RICO, what racketeering, what organization do we have here? We don't have any organization. There's no organization. And the thing about it is, by the way, to get a RICO conviction, it could be, it basically is 2 or 3 people working in concert together toward that, in a process that's yielding criminal activity. So you really don't need to have a charter. You don't need to have a headquarters. You don't need to be incorporated and have workers' comp coverage and dental. But it's interesting because Antifa is very well funded. And the various groups and entities that fall under Antifa are very much real. They have handbooks. They have material that they print and produce. They have meetings. All the stuff that they are denying, that the left is denying happening, is actually very much there. So one of the people that fell into a little bit of a trap here was Keith Ellison. Saturday on MSNBC said that Donald Trump was the very first person to use the term Antifa, that it's made up. That MAGA Republicans from Trump on down have come up with this, that this is a bugaboo, right? And so funny. Here's what he said.
The fact that there is nobody even knows what it is. The first person I ever heard use the word Antifa was Donald J. Trump when he was going on about how there were good people on both sides in Charlottesville. That's the first time I ever heard anyone use the term. So now it's this amorphous thing, and if nobody's really Antifa, then everybody could be. And the reason you can't find them is because they're just that crafty.
Problem is that the internet quickly discovered that Keith had posted back in 2018, the internet is forever, had posted a picture of himself, a tweet with a book on Antifa. And this is what the tweet read, quote, "At Moon Palace Books, I just found the book that strikes fear in the heart of Donald Trump." And he's got a picture of the Antifa handbook. The tweet has since been deleted. He's removed it, right? But you get the idea. They're desperately trying to say that Antifa is a creation of the right. So much so that you have a cacophony of left-wing voices, mainstream media voices, repeating there is no such thing as Antifa over and over again. Here's just a little sample.
There's no Antifa. This is an entirely imaginary organization. There is not an Antifa.
Like, I don't even know what Antifa is. There is no group.
It's not even like far-right groups like the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. Compared to right-wing extremists, Antifa-linked violence is rare and limited.
It isn't an organization. It is in many ways mythology.
It's not like the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers, sort of defined terrorist organizations with leadership that leads violence.
It's not a highly organized movement. It's a moniker. It's not a unified group like the Proud Boys are. Things like Antifa are things that are thought up.
It's all in this guise of going after Antifa, which is nothing. There's no organization called Antifa.
Nobody's a member of Antifa because it doesn't exist. They are just declaring into existence something that doesn't exist.
There is no Antifa organization, so maybe that's good for social media. But it really is non-existent.
They exist on the internet in chat rooms and in 4chan and Discord and places like that where they run discussion boards, trade tactics, documents, things like that. But none of them are called Antifa.
All right. Well, I mean, these people, I maybe don't even think Hamas exists. They certainly, right. I mean, okay. This is, to me, and because I think this is new, I've never heard these denials before. In fact, there's a long history of Democrats embracing, and Keith Ellison is one example, that embracing Antifa as as a legitimate organization. Going back to Trump's first term in office, if you'll recall, starting in 2017, and leading up through the summer of George. Remember when we were all talking about the riots, this August, summer riots of 2020, BLM, and we had the violent protest breakout. We had violent, burning of American cities. And Antifa was involved in it. People were talking about it. And actually, the left was coming to Antifa's defense, saying that this was a righteous expression of anger for the unjustness, police violence, abuse, erosion of civil liberties, etc., that this was a righteous expression of anger against all of that. And now we, flash forward 5 years, and they're going, oh, what, Antifa who? No, we've never heard of this. This is not real. It's not anything. I'll explain why they're doing it. It's not just because they don't want to see themselves get prosecuted. Although that is a component of it. Sam Mirejovsky here. The What's Right Show will be back in just a moment. Hi, Sam Mirejovsky here. Don't worry, we're back. The What's Right Show is on like Donkey Kong. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. Now, Mark Bray, who's an American financier of Antifa, sort of the money guy behind Antifa, who coordinates with other NGOs and various groups, high net worth individuals, Democrats who fund this. He's also an assistant professor at Rutgers. Called actually at one point here for mass violent criminality to save him and his co-conspirators in Antifa. And that they're doing this because Trump is actually, the Department of Justice has, they announced, right? They had last week the gathering at the White House and declared Antifa a terrorist organization. And in so doing, they said, look, we're going to use every means that we have at our disposal at the Department of Justice, the FBI, to dismantle Antifa, go after it, hammer and tongs. Now, Bray and others are obviously nervous. And what are they going to do to fight back against this? Are they going to hire good lawyers? Well, they might do that as well. But a day ago on Blue Sky, which is Twitter for morons. That's liberal Twitter. Don't go on there. I mean, you can go on there for, comedy, but it's actually so bad it's sad. Mark Bray writes, it's true that sometimes the law holds back Trump and affords us some semblance of safety, but the more we lean into the law as our shield, the more powerful it will become as a sword when Trump changes it in his favor and wields it against us. But it's this line that caught my eye. Only mass anti-fascism, legal or not, can save us. Now, a lot of people have been asking him, what does that mean? People on there writing basically use the Second Amendment to its fullest, raise arms. I mean, it is a call for armed revolt. Do you remember when, a couple weeks back, Trump summoned all of the generals to D.C., to Virginia? Summoned all the generals, brought them all in, admirals, generals, basically the top brass of the military. And Pete Hegseth gave them the speech that most people remember for, you guys are fat, start exercising, okay? And don't be woke. And I've had a lot of people go to me and say, well, Sam, what was that all about? Was it, Scott Adams, for example, says it could have been pretext for planning a major military operation. I am convinced, folks, that the real story is actually this. I'm convinced that the President of the United States has a reasonable belief that this comment by Mark Bray and others, that anti-fascism, right, the Antifa revolt, legal or not, that they are going to do some bad stuff. Again, remember, today on Charlie Kirk Day, and Charlie Kirk's getting recognized at the White House posthumously a little bit later this afternoon, I think 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock local time. Remember how they celebrated Charlie's death. There is bloodthirst in this movement. Look at Jay Jones in Virginia. Jay Jones is running to be the chief law enforcement officer of the Commonwealth of Virginia. He openly advocated for, fantasized about the killing of young children whom he called little fascists. It's noteworthy, right? Little fascists deserved to die in their parents' arms because their father is a Republican. I think Trump understands, remember, Trump well knows what happened on January 6th and the kind of, chaos that can be sown by agents of the deep state, recognizes that disgruntled members of the deep state, various NGOs getting together funding Antifa, could start a revolution, a civil war in the country. And the thing, if that is a possibility, it doesn't matter, 20% possibility, 30% possibility. If you believe it's a possibility and you're the commander in chief, what is the one thing you need to make sure that you have? And forget the FBI, okay? Stop. The FBI is rotten to its core, and it'll take 100 Cash Patels to clean it out. Don't hold your breath. But what are you going to need absolutely on lock, okay, to ensure that the country is protected and held together? It's the military. And it turns out a lot of what Hegseth did there was try to smoke out the wokesters. A slew of people have been fired from top positions in the military in the wake of the grand gathering. Hegseth is cleaning out the military. Now, this is good, of course, because we need to be on war footing at all times in order to preserve the safety of our country. but also not just from external forces, but domestically. I'm convinced, these people are dangerous. They're violent. They're going to do crazy things. And in places like California, I hate to tell my good friends in California, you got a little bit of a problem there. Say you live in LA. Your mayor, your governor, basically all of your elected officials that surround you and have power over your life gladly work hand in hand with these Antifa lunatics. They are working together in concert. How do you go and fix that? It's going to need a lot more than just 100 or 200 National Guard troops like you're seeing sent to Portland and to Chicago. Those are dry runs. So to me, this is one of the most underreported stories of what potentially could happen here. And again, it could all get thwarted. It could all get dismantled. You know, Trump already met with Bill Gates at the White House about a month ago, and he basically told him, if you give another dollar to Arabella Advisors, this group that's funding Antifa, the Department of Justice is going to destroy you. Bill Gates walked out of the White House and announced he was separating from Arabella Advisors. So there's some progress being made. Sam Mirejovsky on the What's Right Media Network. Welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. here on the What's Right Media Network. Now, friends, I have to tell you, as part of common sense conservatism, there are things that have to be called out. And one of those things, I see this now in the wake of the peace agreement getting called. I still see the pro-Palestinian side parroting the Hamas propaganda. The 67 or 70,000 dead Palestinians. And when you press them, they always say, well, that's the information that we are given. Read, we believe Hamas propaganda. And why do they believe it? Because it is convenient to their narrative. This is very dangerous. By the way, we should never engage in this as conservatives. We should always go to facts and verify facts and test facts, because we are not emotional people. We are logical people. Now, I don't know. I can't tell you what the true number is. I'm just deeply skeptical based on everything that I know of anything that Hamas tells me. The same way I am deeply skeptical of anything that MSNBC tells me. Doesn't mean that MSNBC is always wrong. It just means they're mostly wrong. Let me tell you where that happens now. Quite a lot. There is an ongoing conversation about political violence in this country. And it matters, especially if we're talking about Antifa and we're talking about this, Democratic Socialists of America gaining a foothold within the Democratic Party, perhaps on the cusp next month of electing their first mayor of a big city in America, in New York, Mr. Mamdani. So this idea of left-wing violence, right? You got I'm always hearing, right? This refrain that it happens on both sides. And they will throw out things like, and they have many times, the arson attack on Josh Shapiro. There's been an update on that. There's literally been, the guy, well, let me pull it up here. I got it. He pled guilty. Cody Bomber. Now, he threw a series of Molotov cocktails into the governor's residence. It was a dangerous fire, happened back in April. Josh Shapiro, of course, is a Democrat. And the left has been using this case. Like, look, it's a Democrat. He got targeted, probably a crazy right-winger, MAGA Republican. Well, not so fast. Who was this guy? Bomber, okay, the arsonist, now has pleaded guilty, so we can call him that. He's a flat-out arsonist. terrorist was a pro-Hamas guy. This is what they'll never tell you. He was a Palestine, activist. And this is the guy who had, by the way, who had targeted Shapiro because, wait for it, he's Jewish. So I'm just following up on this. It's exactly what it's. Wow, there's another one of the myths, punctured. And notice, by the way, in the reporting about this, they really do not get into the motives at all. I'm reading an NBC News article on this that came out just this morning. And it goes through everything. It goes through the mechanics of what he did, how it was caught on camera, how the governor was threatened, and it just, you have to get all the way to the very end, which nobody does. Bomber, here it says, okay, Bomber suggested he was upset by Governor Josh Shapiro's position on the war in Gaza. Okay, so there it is. Shapiro sharply condemned the rise of anti-Semitism in the U.S. following the October 7th, 2023 terrorist Hamas attack, specifically at some Palestinian protests during the 2-year war. So there it is. That's all they say about it. It just quietly dies. Can't let them get away with that. Now, here's another thing. I mentioned Virginia and Jay Jones last hour. Jay Jones is still in the race in Virginia. And I saw this, nobody's disavowing him. No, they are not. Here's the Democratic Wins media account announced early this morning that Pete Buttigieg is going to travel to Virginia to campaign beside Abigail Spanberger. And that Andy Beshear is already campaigning for Mickey Sherrill. That's another Democrat candidate in the race. So you've got Spanberger, Sherrill, and Jones were running as some sort of, a trifecta ticket. They all marketed themselves or signs up all over Virginia for those three candidates. And neither Spanberger nor Sherrill has come out to distance themselves really in any way or call for him to step down, Jay Jones, from the race in the wake of those horrific texts and comments that he made about a Republican and his family. They're proud of this. They're not even hiding it. That's the takeaway. They're not hiding it. They are rounding, getting their wagons together and protecting one another. That's what's going on. I think given today and honoring Charlie Kirk, speaking of political violence, Charlie Kirk will be honored posthumously at the White House this afternoon. Probably right now, we're kind of following this, how it's happening. Is it going on right now, Robbie? It's on. The event is on. A Presidential Medal of Freedom to be awarded, again, posthumously to Charlie Kirk. And, I'm just, the overwhelming thought that I have is that we are not like them. And I say this emphatically even to my friends on our side. We always have to remember this. We have to be the people capable of having discourse and a conversation with the other side, even if the other side doesn't want to have a conversation. We always have to be the side that deals with things the proper democratic way. And that word right now has been completely bastardized by the left. I mean, democracy, right? Democracy. It's just like Antifa is not anti-fascist. It's actually fascist. The same way the Democratic Party is really not that democratic. The People's Republic of China. Well, I could go on and on. The left loves to rebrand things. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Right. So it's always a lie. It's always a myth. It's why they like to monkey with language, because language is only to serve political means. It's never to speak or to declare or define a verifiable truth. That's the thing. So, today, with honoring Charlie Kirk, talking about political violence, because of course, Charlie's violent murder last month has thrust this issue, I think, into focus. And seeing that there are Democrats that still refuse to distance themselves and to call out the toxicity of these types of violent declarations and violent words is deeply troubling. It worries me. Now, I want to play something here if we're going to remember Charlie Kirk. This is an event with a young adult asking a question. There was a kind of I don't know if he was a teen. It was a young adult. And he said, the guy asked Charlie Kirk, what advice would you give to a young kid that wants to do something similar to what you've done with your career? Okay. As far as starting Turning Point USA or just impacting people. And here was Charlie Kirk's answer.
Strive to be a better person every single day, because your character is a reflection of your soul. Learn something new every single day. It doesn't matter where you go to college. It's just a piece of paper, honestly. What matters is who you are as a person. Take the relationships with people that are older than you very seriously and memorialize those conversations forever. Next time you sit down with a grandparent or a business person, record those conversations. You're going to want them. When you encounter difficulty, train yourself to blame yourself. Train yourself to say, it's my fault. What did I do wrong? That's hard. The more wise you are, the more cheerful and happy you will be. You live in a wonderful country. Man, what a gift we've been given. Don't get into the whole complaining that everything around me is terrible and awful. We talked about many of that. But believe that your actions matter. Apply yourself accordingly. Work harder every single day. And after a decade of that, I think you'll be in a pretty good place.
This is really great advice. You know what I think, and I've said this here before, but I'm going to repeat it again. I think that the fundamental difference between conservatives and liberals is that conservatives are positive people. We love our country. We have patriotism. We honor our parents and grandparents. Again, I'm not saying this is every single person, right? But there are exceptions. But universally, we honor, the experienced and wizened men and women in our lives. We respect the law. Okay. We think we can do it. We believe in ourselves. We don't sit around and agonize about, well, what's the government going to do? What's society going to do for it? We don't dwell on all the different ways that we've been wronged. We don't sit around hating our country. We don't talk down to older people. You boomer, you don't know what you're talking about. Get out of here. I think the violence is coming from decades now of liberal indoctrination that is making people miserable. And they are so miserable inside their souls that they're lashing out. What Charlie Kirk says here about building yourself up in order to build your character, that your character is a reflection of your soul. This is exactly it. The left just tears you down. And if you're stuck in that doom loop, if you are, if you've been reading the books and listening to MSNBC and just being told all the time that the temperatures are going up, the environment's in a doom, the Western civilization is horrible, your whole life you're a sinner, and if you're a white man, you are the cause of all that ails the world. I can understand why you feel miserable. But you can just say no. You can walk away. Yeah, I think this is absolutely powerful. I'm up against this break, unfortunately. What's Right Show, back in a moment. Don't go anywhere, folks.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, Sam Mirejovsky here. The What's Right Show brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. So, given today will be recognized as Charlie Kirk Day, here's another wonderful bit of advice that Charlie Kirk gives to a 13-year-old about courage, honesty, and homeschooling. I love this one, Robbie, so much. Listen to what he tells this girl.
My name is Grace. I'm 13 and I've been homeschooled since kindergarten. What advice do you have for me as I move into adulthood in order to become a more informed and involved citizen?
I have hope thanks to people like you. How old are you again?
13.
13. So here's a couple things I want to encourage you to do. Learn something new every single day. And focus on what it means to be a good person and a person of strong character. And especially when you get into the world of trying to be around social approval and kind of everything around you. Courage is what's missing in our country. We have a courage crisis right now. Aristotle said that courage is the ultimate virtue. Without it, there are no other virtues. Think about that. If people aren't courageous, you don't have honesty. You don't have justice. You don't have beauty. You don't have wonder. If people don't have courage to act. And so at age 13, I want you to commit yourself to a life of courage. Courage is doing the right thing when you don't know how it's going to work out. And I'm given hope by the amount of young homeschooling children that are rising up in our country. Now, let me tell you this. People say, Charlie, what does success look like? New York Times headline in 2050. America's sudden, shocking, and inexplicable right turn can be traced back to homeschooling explosion during COVID-19. That's what success looks like, everybody.
Yeah, because the homeschooling movement is all about taking kids away from the indoctrination of the left. The left wants to make our kids miserable. I'm not saying every teacher is this way, but overwhelmingly, the teachers' unions, the teaching machinery, public school machinery in this country, and even a lot of private schools, to be perfectly honest, I'm always surprised in my kids' private schools what kind of nonsense can be taught in some of the classrooms. So it's a hard thing for me and for you to fight against when our kids come home and they've already spent 6 hours at school and been brainwashed by people who want your child, my child, to be miserable, to be less informed. Right? What's Charlie Kirk say here? In both of these clips that I played, the one just now and the one before the break, in both the clips, it's about knowledge, about listening to your elders, and about, being, having courage and being able to stand up for yourself. We really can opt out of the insanity in this world. I'm very hopeful of this. And by the way, here's a story today that's circulating some data. Give you this. I'm going to just pull this up here real fast because there's some data here. Let's see. This is okay. The whole trans movement has been on the upswing, and it's because, and it's fueled largely by social contagion, right? Kids want to stand out. They're coming out of the COVID lockdowns. They're lost and behind in school. And how do you stand out? Well, I'm trans. I'm non-binary. I'm a squirrel. I'm a whatever. And it's unfortunately it's infected our youth. Well, here's what they're finding out in the data, that it is dropping precipitously. There is a From 2016 to 2025, share of students not identifying as male or female. Okay, so people that are going, I'm non-binary. Wow, from a high of almost 10% in 2023, it is now down, according to a Brown study, down to 2%. It's an 8%, drop. The FIRE study has it slightly lower of a drop from about 7% down to 3%. And the Andover study is the big one, sorry, and the Brown one is a little bit more gradual from about 5% down to 3%. But at any rate, all three studies confirm that this is reversing. The good news is it's retreating. And why is it retreating? Going back to what Charlie Kirk said, courage is so important. It was hard in the midst of the peak madness, call it 22, 23, 2 or 3 years ago. It was very difficult to stand up and go, this trans thing is tough. These people are just, they need help. This is a mental illness. It's not real. There are men or women, male, female. That's what we have. Don't get at me with gender. We have biological sex. It's binary. And there's no such thing as being neither. You can't declare yourself, you can't opt out of, your genetics, your chromosomal makeup. Can't do it. You said that, you'd suffer tremendous risk, reputational risk, career risk. Actually, I want to talk a little bit about that when we come back. Because Kirk is right. Charlie Kirk is right. To save this country, we all need to be a little bit more brave. And it's hard. And I'll tell you, I'm the first to admit that it's difficult. Sam Mirejovsky, here on the What's Right Media Network. Well, the subject of bravery is very important to me. It's huge. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. This hour of the show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash, 702-820-1234. Offices in Nevada and California. By the way, quick Sam and Ash story here. I was talking about the medical reductions. This is something what we do. The end of every case, typically you have a lot of hospital bills or medical bills. And sometimes, you go to the hospital, you run those, and there's insurance, for the car that hit you, and it's not enough to cover all the bills. And if you don't have a good lawyer, or if you don't have a lawyer at all, you potentially could end up paying the difference between whatever you collect from the insurance company and the total of those medical bills. And I gave the example from last week. Somebody came to us with $1.2 million in meds. It's a lot of medical bills. And it was due. It was payable. They got a bill for it. Imagine getting $1 million bill. And the policy, the available money from the other side from the accident was very low, was the minimum, was $25,000. And that $25,000 it doesn't cover the bills. And so they would have, had they not had us working on the case, would have been responsible for whatever the difference is, which is basically $1 million. And because the team here at Sam and Ash reduced those bills down to $3,000, that person ended up with money in their pocket. They would have had to have declared bankruptcy. And instead, they ended up with cash. That's the Sam and Ash difference. Just, letting you know. Now, speaking of Sam and Ash, and I'm thinking about this, reputational risk from speaking the truth. It is not popular, okay, to, over the last 5 years, and I'm going deliberately back to COVID, the last 5 years, to defend Trump, to fight against COVID regulation, overregulation, overreach, lockdowns, shutdowns, vaccine mandates. trans insanity, BLM, the insanity under Biden. Yesterday was a big day. Yesterday was a day when a number of people on the left begrudgingly had to admit that Trump got something really great done, meaning the peace deal in the Middle East. Now, just a small sliver of Trump's critics came out to admit he had done good, all right? There are still tens of thousands of prominent voices who have been highly critical of Trump. That's a euphemism, okay? Who still have not admitted that they were wrong about him. Now, I know for a fact that sitting here behind the What's Right microphone, I was right about COVID. The shutdown did not have to last as long as it did. I'll actually even admit that there shouldn't have even been a shutdown, which I was initially supportive of. I can't tell you how many times speaking out against Sisolak here in Nevada, Newsom in California, and other shutdown fanatics that wanted to run this country into the ground, who wanted to literally destroy and tank our economy just to get at Trump and to hinder Trump politically and set up a situation where the election in 2020 could be rigged via mail-in ballots, something we didn't even realize then in the moment, but what would later happen. Speaking out against that was not easy. I had people in Vegas here going basically, don't call Sam's law firm. They're terrible people. They want people to die of COVID. That happened. It is equally not popular to speak out against the trans insanity. It is much easier to go, you know what, I'm just a let and let live guy. I don't understand it. You know, I guess some kids, you know, they need the help. I'm not, it's not my place. The problem is that morally, it is our place to protect the kids. There are parents out there who are insane. There are schools, administrators, counselors, people that are crazy. There are doctors that are profiting off of this. It's going to go down as one of the greatest scandals in our nation's history. We will examine this for years, decades to come. And what about the lawfare against Trump? What about the years of outright lies and distortions and violence actually perpetrated against Trump in court, right? Just horrible, culminating in 2 failed assassination attempts. Thank goodness. But the death of an actual patriot there who attended Trump's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Speaking out against all of that also was not popular. The turning point actually came in Butler. That was the day when I sensed the shift. That was the day, the next day, I think, or maybe later that very same day, Elon Musk wrote that he would be supporting Donald Trump for president. He came out and said, I support Trump. It was that July day in 2024 where things changed. But I'm going to tell you, it's been no easy road. And that's, by the way, why I appreciate your support of Sam and Ash injury law so much, because we've gotten a lot of hate because people out there are crazy. And they think, you know, they listen to a minute or two of this program, and they think that what we're doing here is spewing hateful rhetoric. And these are the same people that went around thinking that Charlie Kirk was spewing hateful rhetoric. And the more clips you listen to of Charlie Kirk talking to people, you realize what a gloriously humanistic and compassionate person he was. This program here is a labor of love for me. I love this. I enjoy it. I don't make any money doing it. It's really just something that I enjoy. And I do it because it's what I can do to help save our country. If we all do a little bit together, we can leave America in a better place than we found it. Now, I look at this presidency so far. I look at what Donald Trump has done in the last several months since January 20th, and I stand amazed at how far we have come. Every day, somebody is grousing that Pam Bondi isn't moving fast enough. Kash Patel is moving fast. Sometimes I grouse about it too. And then I step back and I look at where we are. I listen to Kamala Harris give an interview. I watch old clips of Joe Biden giving speeches during his presidency. I get, flashbacks or reminders or callbacks to things that were happening 2 years ago when Donald Trump was getting assailed from all sides, where they literally unloaded everything that they had to get him, and it all failed spectacularly. And Trump, and by extension us and America, came out victorious in November. The agitation that you see happening now, if you look at the Antifa movement, you look at all the violent rhetoric, you even see the violence, the acts of violence, the very real threats, Charlie Kirk's assassination. These are happening because we won and because we are winning. The reason that the left hates Israel, is because Israel is winning. Israel successfully defended herself and fought back and brought hell and fire upon Hamas. Israel went in and brought Iran to her knees. Israel decimated Hezbollah. Israel has slowly and methodically gone after and successfully pursued her enemies. This is very dispiriting to the left. This is why they need to rally around supporting literal terrorists, because if they don't, their very political existence, I'm talking about global leftism, comes undone. And this is why domestically Democrats, particularly Democrats, socialists of America, wrap themselves up in this pro-Palestinian pageantry. It's all nonsense, but they use it as a means to achieve political power. And the antidote is us having courage to speak out against it, spreading the word of positivity, of patriotism, of independence, of strength, the embodiment, right, of the values that make America great. They hate MAGA because literally they don't want America to be great. They hate America. They hate the West. They want to tear it all down, rip it to shreds, and start over, building their socialist utopia, which of course puts them on the top of the dog pile. And we're not going to let that happen. So those are my thoughts on that. Sam Mirejovsky on the What's Right Media Network. There was this great moment in the speech yesterday that Trump gave in Israel talking about Marco Rubio and how incredible Marco Rubio is, how Marco Rubio will go down in history as the best Secretary of State in the U.S. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Throwaway comment, perhaps. Not so fast. If you've been paying attention, Donald Trump is doing a really good job right now of building up the next generation of leadership in the Republican Party. He recognizes that his time is limited. He recognizes that in order for his political movement that he himself alone created, going against Marco Rubio and others in the party, literally fighting against them in the primary. He talks about this in the speech yesterday. He goes, we really went at it, Marco and I, as a tough opponent. But, here we are now. We're the best, and Marco's the best. Even though he literally fought these people, some of them like Marco Rubio, in order to get his vision and version of the Republican Party off the ground, Trump now is uniting with these people and building them up. To the point where, if you'll recall, a year ago, I was a little bit concerned about who takes the mantle, the torch and moves on with the movement. I don't feel that way anymore. J.D. Vance is excited. Look at Pete Hegseth. What a star. Marco Rubio. There are some legit, great thinking, believing patriots that are in Trump's administration and Trump's orbit. Now, this is a contrast to someone else who's been in the news quite a bit. Barack Obama. Have you seen some of these interviews that he's done? Barack Obama is doing all the podcasts. This caught my eye. I want to share it with you. This was the Mark Maron podcast yesterday. And Obama here is basically complaining how after he left the White House, he was drawn right back into politics because the Democratic Party needed a leader. There was nobody there to effectively lead the opposition. Listen to this.
One of the problems with the American political system is, although we have political parties, we don't have a parliamentary system. So basically, the president, in my case, Democrat, I leave office, and there's no obvious person who's now the shadow prime minister, the leader of the party for the Democrats, right? And so there were a lot of terrific people who were doing good work, but we have this weird situation where you don't have a designated person who's speaking on behalf of the whole party. So I actually found myself drawn back in to day-to-day politics or commentary more than I had wanted to be.
After the second term.
In 2017, 2018.
First of all, people are picking this, apart because Obama was behind the scenes, in this period, orchestrating a coup against Trump. And that, I think, is all coming out now, and Obama's doing a lot of talking, too, because I think he's getting nervous that he's next up after Letitia James and James Comey. There's a larger RICO case that is being developed against Hillary Clinton and Obama behind the scenes. We'll see what happens of that, but certainly the people in that group are very nervous. The Brennans, okay? Obviously the Clinton people, the Obama people, and all the folks in that group, very nervous about what they did in the lead up to Trump's election, the transition, and then during Trump's first term in office. But I'm not going to focus on that here. I'm going to say something that's very, very obvious, which is, okay, Obama's lamenting that there wasn't anybody to take the reins over. Who did he set up in the next generation to take the reins? Hillary Clinton? Are you kidding me? Joe Biden? The reason Obama picked Joe Biden to be his running mate is he didn't want any competition. He didn't want someone who would steal his thunder. He didn't want to compete against someone intelligent, charming, someone who had a following, who'd been politically successful. Yeah, Biden ran for president like, 100 times? Always lost, and on day one. Obama didn't want competition from a smart guy who was well-spoken. He picked literally an idiot to be his running mate. It has to be said, right? And Hillary Clinton was the next runner-up. Are you kidding me? And it's like this with the Democrats, kind of writ large. I mean, look, you've got Pelosi. Who did Pelosi set up? Hakeem Jeffries? Hakeem Jeffries is a bozo. Schumer. Poor Chuck Schumer, he's up there. He looks half dead. Now, I would argue Mitch McConnell the same way in the Republican Party in the Senate, right? There's no obvious heir apparent, and all of this was ripe for Trump, destructing it with a new agenda, and it's one of the reasons why then Obama was so distraught and they had to come up with a coup, because they had failed politically. But the political failure was theirs, right? I mean, they failed, and they failed because of their egos. They weren't willing to share the stage with anybody. Schumer, Pelosi, Obama. And what a lot of these people constantly say, and they hear it in the media, is what an egoist Trump is. What an ego. Trump's ego, right? They talk about that a lot. But in reality, Trump's actually shown a lot of humility. And there was a particular moment where his humility came out. This was Sunday on Air Force One. I have to share this with you. This is the audio only of him basically saying video. Oh, it is video too. Okay. Well, this is what he said about maybe not getting into heaven.
You had talked a couple weeks ago, you were doing an interview, and you talked about how you hope to end the war in Ukraine because it might help you get into heaven. How does this help? Does this help?
I mean, I'm being a little cute. I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven. Okay, I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. I may be in heaven right now as we fly in Air Force One. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make heaven, but I've made life a lot better for a lot of people. And as an example, had the election of 2020 not been rigged, you would have millions of people living just in Russia, Ukraine alone. That would have never happened.
I love this man. Absolutely. Sam Mirejovsky, back tomorrow. See you then.